So here to share with us the 2014 mobile application development trend is the CEO of the VisionMobile. So please welcome, ladies and gentlemen, Mr. Andreas Constantinou. A big round of applause, please.
So good morning, everyone. Andreas Constantinou. I run a company called VisionMobile. We're an analyst company, and we run the largest, most global developer survey. I suspect there's quite a few developers here. Show of hands. Is it most of you? Is it many of you? Good. I think it's most of you. Great. So we talk to about 7,000 developers twice a year. The number's been increasing. I've been doing this for about 5 years now. And initially it was in the Apple, like 2008 Apple launch era. And back then, very, very few mobile developers. Mobile developer wasn't even a name in the dictionary. And since then, we know how it's grown. We projected that the app economy was a $68 billion economy. So things have grown really out of proportion. So here I'm going to present you the insights from the latest State of the Developer Nation research. We run that twice a year. So it's kind of like the pulse of the developer economy, what platforms, revenues, costs, tools, and so on developers are using for developer loyalty and the like. All of the insights you can see here, you can actually download. It's part of a free report, and I'll give you the download link at the very end. So I'm a CEO and founder. I'm also an adjunct professor in Sweden teaching mobile industry dynamics. We do a number of stuff. We track business models for developers. We track revenues and costs and so on, as I mentioned, platforms with a pretty good client list and media coverage. So moving on, we released this about 2 weeks ago. So largest ever mobile developer survey. I think the number talks by itself. And I'm going to share with you the key findings, like what does the snapshot of the developer economy look like today? What are people using, what are not using? Who are the winners and losers? So starting with, I mentioned it's $68 billion industry. And it's really growing. I would say even our conservative of $143 billion in 2006 is conservative, just because every single vertical is adopting mobile. If you don't have a website today as a company, you don't exist. Tomorrow, if you don't have an app as a company, you won't exist. So this is the size of the economy we're talking about. We estimate there's about 2.3 million developer individuals who are developers. By developer, I mean developers, designers, entrepreneurs. I'll give you a bit more color about who are the different developers because the community is extremely diverse. So we estimate most of the population is, of course, in the 3 major continents, Europe, US, and Asia. And actually, Asia is slightly above the rest in terms of developer population. So we're talking about large developer numbers that will become much larger. Moving on, HTML5. I think there's been a lot of damage by the press who say HTML versus native. It's not black and white, right? There's many reasons why you can use both. And there's hybrid solutions. There is translator solutions. There is native JS runtimes, like in the case of Tizen. So it's not about the browser, we really need to wake up to the new reality that HTML5 is really there to coexist, complement native. So we actually got some interesting stats. This is what we call mobile developer mindshare. So here we track what platforms developers are actually using. And this using means downloading the SDK, trying out a few apps just for fun, or publishing, or running your own software business. It's on that platform. So it's anything that concerns use of a platform. So we've been tracking that for a number of years. Here you see the last six periods. Each period is 6 months. So Android and iOS are relatively stable. In fact, very, very stable. Duopoly is really entrenched. This is facts. HTML5 now is interesting. And this little circle there, which I'll explain what this means. 37% of developers go direct to browser. That means websites or web apps. But another 15% of developers go beyond the browser, using hybrid solutions like Cordova, or using translator solutions like Accelerator, or using native JS APIs like Tizen and Firefox. And if you look at other uses, more niche uses of HTML5, like a browser which is used to show documentation or other use cases, then you see that the share of developers who are using HTML5 in one way or another is actually above iOS. So you can't compare HTML5 as a platform. It's not a platform, it's a technology, a specification, a group of companies promoting it, but it's actually used in many, many ways as a complement to native. Now, there's been a lot of debate, like, are developers going iOS first or Android first? Like, everybody's heard it. It's been on TechCrunch, it's been on GigaOM, and everybody shouts, oh, no, this is the case of, my friends say this or my developers say that. Well, we actually have some numbers to clarify the picture. So it varies by platform, it varies by region, it varies by a host of different things. So firstly, iOS attracts the most loyal developers. Loyalty we define as out of the total developers using iOS, how many are using it as their start or main platform. And the main platform means this is where you start your development, and then you port it or you take the features onto and the development onto another platform. The main platform is really important because this is where you're putting your marketing effort, your development effort, your customer support effort. The lead platform is very important, and that's why we associate that with loyalty. Android is far lower, despite commanding far more device share, like over 80% of device sales share, and of course much more developer mind share. So here you see the picture. You have 5 platforms here, and the green bit is the developers that choose that platform as their primary or main or starting platform. So you see there's a very big gap between iOS and Android and the remaining platforms, BlackBerry, HTML5, and Windows Phone. Now, who comes first? Is it Android first or iOS first? And here's the big picture. So here we looked at main regions and the countries where we had large sample sizes from our research. Clearly, North America and Canada are iOS first, no doubt. But Asia, Australia, and many parts in Latin America are Android first. Now, you note that you don't see HTML5 in this picture. It's because HTML5 is usually a supplementary option. It's like a companion development platform. Also note the huge discrepancy between Android and iOS in Asia. And it's of course because of the demographic distribution there and the type of handsets developers are buying. Now, form factors. There's been a lot of talk about wearables. What's the situation? Users are starting to buy them. Are developers buying into wearables or e-readers or anything beyond tablets? So it's actually still early days. And so the peaks you see there is the total share of developers who target any one form factor. So of course you have smartphones being number 1, right? Of course you have tablets being number 2. But here's an interesting detail. Tablets are not a primary development option. They are being used as a second option after smartphones. So developers don't start saying, well, I'll first develop on tablet. I will start with my smartphone app, and then I'll go tablet. In vast majority, 50%, what's the add up? It's 72% of developers in the green and blue bits of tablets that use tablets as a secondary option. And then you see the long tail, and it's really a long tail. It's all single digit. Feature phones are dying, of course. Who develops Java? Sorry, I hope I haven't insulted anyone here. But it's a really long tail. And these will pick up, but it's just now, in the last maybe 2 months, that the first wearable SDKs are coming out. So, you have to give it time. Now, which is the leading platform on tablets versus smartphones? And here's the surprise. You'd expect, with so many Android tablets out there, that Android will have a far bigger loyalty. This is developer preference or loyalty for what platforms are being used on smartphones versus tablets. And you see that developers are going for iOS first on tablets, which kind of makes sense, but it's a very interesting data point. Now, revenue. We coined this term a year ago on the app poverty line, and people like it. We read it in the news, like VisionMobile said, X number of developers are below the app poverty line. It's a catchy thing, but you have to take it with a pinch of salt. So firstly, here's the data, right? 60% are below the app poverty line. That means they make less than $500 per app per month. Now you have to take this with a pinch of salt because not all developers care about money. So if you are in a non-mobile business and you want to extend to mobile, money is not your first priority. Usually you go for consumer engagement, brand affinity, user acquisition, and so on, not directly money. If you look at hobbies and explorers, the developer segments who are mostly interested in fun, sense of achievement, peer recognition, they don't care about money. So this is not like, oh, developers don't make any money, It's not about that. It's that there is a big portion of that would be interested in money, but it's not their main goal in app development. So, and the revenue distribution varies a lot. So you see here that iOS has a far broader middle class, if you like, compared to all other, iOS has the far largest middle class compared to all the other platforms. What this means is that there is more people making between 500 and 1,000, I think it's about $10,000 per month per application. Now, moving on, it's interesting to see the distribution of revenues. So I'm consciously not saying that developers are making this much on Android and this much on iOS, because it would be a gross oversimplification. So what we looked at is the distribution of revenues. And what you see actually is a very, very, very clear picture. Right? So developers make, on average, far more money within the $500 to $1,000 per app per month segment. Windows Phone and Windows 8, why are they so low? It's not that the platform sucks. It's not that, this is the end. But developers who go for Windows 8 and Windows Phone, often, because they are new platforms, they are attracted by the hobbyists and the explorers. And you see that if you actually have a Windows Phone handset, you can actually see that you get different types of apps there than on Android or iOS. Now, you are an app developer. Which revenue model should you go for? Surprisingly, it's not about in-app. It's not about pay-per-download. It's not about advertising. Contract development and e-commerce lead the revenue league. Now, I think an important innovation in this graph is that we've actually split revenue models by intention. So we said, app is a product, can be a product. It can also be a channel. So if your app is your product, then you're doing contract work, or you're doing pay-per-download, or in-app purchases, and so on. You aim to make money from it, in other words. If you're using your app as a product, then you're likely to make far more money than as a contract developer. And this should be no surprise. Most of the money made on the web, especially in the early days, was all about contract development. People wanted to get websites done. They still do. Right? And web lacked a micropayments mechanism. Mobile does, but still, The App Store revenues, we calculate, are 1/4 of the total pie of $68 billion revenues. In other words, App Store revenues are just 1/4 of the entire app economy revenues. This should not come as a surprise. Now, if you go to the other sector, which is app as a channel, you're using apps to reach consumers. You're using them to drive e-commerce business. You're using them to do affiliate or promotion or CPI models. And of course, the e-commerce business is going to develop or bring far higher revenues, because that means you have an existing business, either you or your client, and you're using the app as a channel, like an eBay application. And affiliate CPI programs are incredibly high. Actually, a side note here, Facebook is really taking up the world in terms of app advertising and installation. It's really become the single most dominant channel. If you see Facebook revenues, they're growing up almost on a linear curve, whereas their desktop revenues are constant. So the fact that they've reached over 50% of the revenues coming from mobile is all because of CPI, cost per install, them helping developers get their apps discovered. So it's like the mainstream option. Now, tools. I imagine a lot of you are using tools. We have been tracking tools for a long time. We have a database on our website which tracks over 800, actually 807 tools as of yesterday, across the spectrum, cross-platform, ad networks, user analytics, bug tracking, enterprise, over 30 tool categories. So we're curious, actually, which of these are most important? Why? On which platforms? So this graph tells a couple of stories. So firstly, which are the most popular tools? They're user analytics, cross-platform, and ad networks. Kind of makes sense, right? But they're significantly used more than any other tool category. Secondly, which platforms have the most readiness for tools? And this is important, because we're no longer in 2008 or 2009, where the platform was all you needed to be a competitive developer. Today, if you want to be competitive and you want to save time, you absolutely have to use tools. And this is a wide spectrum of tools. Look at all the categories, and this is only a small subset of the categories. But we found through previous research that the more experienced developers are, the more tools they use. The more tools they use, the more money they make. So there's very strong correlation between tools use and ability to succeed as a developer. Here, the other interesting thing that you see is that iOS is the most tools-ready platform, with over 3.1 tools used by iOS developers on average, 3 different tool types. Android comes next. You see, of course, BlackBerry at the far end. BlackBerry 10 is a relatively new platform, and Windows Phone is trying to catch up. Now, who is using these tools? We have what we call a developer segmentation model. It's the most advanced of its kind, because we looked at not what skills developers have, but we looked at what is the reason for going to develop apps. Are you in it for fun? Do you want to develop an application for your other half, your wife or your girlfriend? Do you want to build apps because you're a product manager and you're actually in a non-mobile business and you want to use apps to extend to new channels? Are you an enterprise IT guy and you want to figure out how to reduce your costs in mobilizing your enterprise, your employees? So there are many different segments. All of these are different reasons for going to mobile apps. And you see the segments there, and you see actually the tools use. So who is the segment? Which is the segment that has the most tools use? Actually, guns for hire. Commission developers. Makes sense, right? Because they need to be competitive. They are paid relatively well. In the US and California, the salaries are astronomical. But they have an arsenal of tools which they use to get their job done. Now, surprisingly, look at enterprise IT. Why is this interesting? Enterprise IT is one of the two money pools in the developer economy. That means if you want to make money as a developer or as a tools vendor, a very easy target with low risk is going to enterprise IT and saying, I can help you build your apps. And all the big companies like Citrix and IBM and HP, are Accenture, everybody is doing just that. But they're using relatively a low number of tools. Or even, these are the guys, 70% of enterprise IT developers actually use some tool, but 25% use none. That means that there's still a very, very big gap to be addressed by tool vendors and platform vendors in catering to that segment of developers. Finally, there's no such thing as a long-tail developer. We work a lot with telcos and OEMs. We hear this fallacy. You know, should we go long tail or should we go to the tier ones? This is an oversimplification. It's not black or white. It's actually many, many shades of gray. 8 different shades of gray. 8 different segments. And you see how they differ. So developers in the hunter segment, hunters are those who develop apps in order to make money. This is their business. So developers in the hunter segment care for revenues. The media publishers don't care about revenues, they care about reach. Hobbyists care for documentation. Because they are new to the platform, they need to experiment, they need to figure out what things they can do for fun. And enterprise IT care for cost and speed. So as you're building a platform, as all the platform guys are building their platforms, as the tool guys are building their tools, they really need to understand that developers here, developers everywhere, are very, very different because they have very, very different motivations. In this chart, we show the 8 different segments that make up the app economy, and here you get a flavor of the revenues made by each segment, the population of each segment, the platforms they adopt, and their motivation. So let's take hunters and guns for hire in green. They actually are responsible for the largest share of revenues in the app economy. Take hunters and explorers in orange. They bring a very small share of revenues, but they're a fairly large part of the app economy. And these are actually the guys who will, when a new platform comes, they will be the first that will risk to adopt. Because they don't care for reach or money, but they want to have some fun and create new things, and so on. So all of this is in this report at the very center, Developer Economics, Q1 2014. You can go actually to developereconomics.com. You can download it. There's a bunch of other stuff. We probably give out a lot of free stuff. A recent one as well is HTML5 versus native. We did a report where we looked at the API gap between HTML5 and native. So you can actually get that. And also a focus report on Europe. So thanks for listening. If you want more insights, more data, that's my email and that's my Twitter handle. Thank you very much.